Hello from Southie. We are at the Commonwealth Museum of Massachusetts State Archives Office of the Secretary of the Commonwealth. They have an exciting new exhibit I have been jonesing to get to on the Revolution's 250. And we're going to take a look, discuss some uniquely Massachusetts history, and do some deep dives here on this gorgeous day out along the water. You can see the Kennedy Library right over there, and the Ted Kennedy Institute for Senate. They have a full mock-up of the Senate chamber in DC there as an educational place for people interested in politics or kids. A lot of school groups go there, and the Kennedy Library over there. But today we are going to be checking out the state archives and see this new exhibit they have going on. They've got some incredible treasures that have a lot to do with all of the things that we've been talking about. And it all ties in, you'll see. Majorly excited to be here because they've got exhibits that I have been dying to see, and all of this ties into everything that we've been saying. So we're gonna get to it. Lots of cool history to dive in, some genuine treasures here today, and we're gonna go do it. Gosh, a giant bunny just came out from under this thing right here and ran over the top of my foot and down through this right here. And Nathan and I like screamed and he jumped over the rock because we didn't know what it was at first, and then we don't know where it went. We're like looking for it, but oh my gosh, maybe that was one of those had to be here to see it type of thing, but that was really funny. Gonna look here, you can see. So we are near the UMass campus, the JFK Library and Museum, the Edward Kennedy Institute, and the water here. Again, absolutely gorgeous day. We're gonna go take a look. I think you can see the city from over here. So there's lots of these walkways all up and down the area, and it is cool because Boston has so many of these peninsulas. Like my previous video where we went to Deer Island, there's a lot of cool scenic spots, a lot of forts, things like that. Figure out what this is. It's windy. Mm-hmm. Of course it, you guys, my hair is like a hot mess. I had a really good hair day, that's the irony, and now look at it. It's just everywhere. You can see, I don't know if you guys can pick up in the distance there, that is an iconic water tower. I don't know what this tower type, oh, it looks like a tower there, it's not really. I don't know what this structure is. They kept it. No signage. Do you guys have any idea? Can anybody identify what this might be? Almost looks like I don't know, some kind of giant storage, a really massive powerhouse. Maybe they kept building materials in it? I don't know. Now, Massachusetts is a Commonwealth, and it's one of only a handful, along with Virginia, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania. And it's really just a historical term that means for the people, Commonwealth, of or for the people. This place is really unique because while it is an active governmental building, it's the Massachusetts State Archives and the office of the Officer of the Commonwealth. They also have a really cool little free museum inside. We've actually only been here once before, and at the time there's no special exhibit, but we've been seeing that they just opened a special exhibit, like I said, for the Rev Wars 250, and can't wait to take a look at what they've got. All right, here we go. And this is sort of just the regular parts of the building. The exhibit part we will get to in there, but here's some signage leading up to it. Oh, there's Dr. Warren right off the bat. And the name of this exhibit is Upon Such Ground. Wow, this is actually an inventory of the estate of Dr. Joseph Warren. Incredible.
Assuming it's just cash and check.
Amazing stuff here. This is a bill from Paul Revere to the state of Massachusetts for his work with the Committee of Safety as a writer. Here they're talking about the Liberty Tree. And remember, this is perhaps the first Liberty pole. Of course, this isn't it. This is made of foam, but had to be mentioned for its importance. A book of minutes from the trial of the soldiers convicted in the Boston Massacre of March 5th, 1770. Oh my gosh, how cool. He ended up only getting manslaughter charges, and but rather than being hanged like you would expect, they got a fun lifelong tattoo. So give me your hand. All right, so here, like along the thumb, they got a nice brand with the letter M. Would you like that?
No.
M for manslaughter.
No, I would not.
Could you imagine having to live with that?
That's weird. That's weird.
And it'd be freaky. A brand?
Yeah.
I guess the testimony is that they cried and whimpered and freaked out right before. I mean, I guess, right? I certainly wouldn't want it. But then it sucks because every time they shook somebody's hand, everybody would know, like, ooh, M for manslaughter. These guys, they did something serious. And yeah, I mean, here you go. Evidence of the past right here. The minute book for the entry criminal trial against the British soldiers. So there were 8 involved in the trial, and yeah, only the 2 were convicted. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, John Adams defended them, which is a little bizarro, but if you know lawyers, that's their job. Upholding the law. They got their fair trial. And a nice M brand for life to go along with it. Here we have an address to King George III, thanking him for repealing the Stamp Act. Well, George, it took you long enough. Here we've got different examples of continental currency.
Paul Revere played it.
I didn't know my day was going to be this good.
Right?
I made a friend. Chester is adorable. Hi, Chester. We love you. You're just cute. Chester, you're adorable. I think I'm in love. More to save the country. Yeah, after the stamp situation and the tea situation, it was pretty much the fate was sealed. And then, of course, the events of Lexington and Concord. Again, open rebellion, and it was on. Perhaps no decision by the Continental Congress would prove to be more impactful than that which they made on June 15, 1775, on the day the Second Continental Congress selected an ambiguous Virginian of the planter class, noble and majestic, being tall and well-proportioned, as a doctor in Cambridge would describe him, to assume command of the provincial military forces surrounding Boston, and that, of course, was His Excellency General George Washington. And as we showed when we went to Harvard and walked around Cambridge last month, he arrived July 2nd, 1775, set up camp there, had a lot of work to do to get the men into shape, but he assumed his command. I am honored with, to Patrick Henry, he would say, remember, Mr. Henry, what I now tell you, from the day I enter upon the command of the American armies, I date my fall and the ruin of my reputation. As in, I had a lot of responsibility and everything to lose. Now we're going to take a little walk through Massachusetts history, starting with the deck of the Arabella, which we are on right now. If you squint, think real hard, and use your imagination. In 1630, the ship Arabella brought Governor John Winthrop and the Massachusetts Bay Charter to New England. The Arabella Insurance Group Charitable Foundation is a major sponsor of the Commonwealth Museum and has generously underwritten the cost of conserving and displaying the charter. See what they did there? The enduring qualities of Massachusetts, the common thread woven by the pilgrim and the Puritan, the fisherman and the farmer, the Yankee and the immigrant, will not be and could not be forgotten. JFK, 1961. England and New England. And remember, the name New England came from John Smith. This is a different John. This is John Winthrop. The 1629 Royal Charter established the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Under the charter, a three-branch government began to take form, and elections were held by secret ballot, two important steps in developing American democracy. Puritan investors obtained the charter for a new colony seeking religious freedom. They plotted to escape the king's power by taking the charter with them on the ship Arabella. And they call Winthrop a Puritan's Puritan. Moderate Puritans, sometimes criticized by those who preferred harsher government. To build a Bible Commonwealth, the Puritans rejected democracy. Despite their beliefs, the Puritans' actions led to democratic practices. In church matters, Puritans challenged the authority of Anglican bishops, and each congregation elected its own minister. Those who proved lazy or dull could be removed. You know, later on, Samuel Adams himself would go on to say that his desire was for Massachusetts to be a Christian Sparta, meaning a place that was for Bible reading, God-fearing folks to come and be safe and thrive. And it might sound odd today, but this was the beliefs of most people in this country for most of our time. And there is no denying that that is the basis for which we were built upon. I think I've mentioned this before. Puritans were big on education and reading because how are you going to read the Bible if you can't read? So they made sure to educate their people. Literacy rates in the colony were higher than in England. It was similar in Scotland. Scotland always has had a high literacy rate, higher than its neighbor down south in England, for similar reasons. A lot of that also came out of the Scottish Enlightenment and the Reformers, the Presbyterian Reformers, who believed, hey, you got to read how you read your Bible in sermons if you're not reading. So that's always been important, as has been the study of the classical languages and things like that. And here we go, King Philip's War, 1676. And if you watch my Taunton Mass video, you will be well versed in this. But yeah, so a series of violent incidents escalated into war when colonists unleashed their fury on native villages. Remember that Metacom took over. His brother had passed away. Massasoit was no longer in, and there was a new sheriff in town. Times were a lot more harsh. There was the praying Indian that was captured and killed. They sought retaliation, and they were hanged. That certainly didn't help the situation and all of the deal breaking that was going on. So things really came to a head and broke into all-out war, which just ravaged the area, Massachusetts in particular. A tough one. 4 soldiers slaughtered Christian Indian women and children on Hurlbury Hill near Concord. The men were hanged for the crime. Wilder was convicted but pardoned. The records of the war crimes trial reflect Puritan fears that such conflicts could brutalize society and undermine the rule of law. It's kind of like I was talking about with Queen Anne's War and the Bracket Massacre. There's just a lot of fear and a lot of, ignorance as well going through. Some of it you can understand, some of it is a stretch, really hard to understand, but times were tough. Everybody was feeling sensitive because of all the violence, and they really just wanted to, stop in its tracks. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. You're dealing with a culture that was already here and certainly had the right to be, but, you could see where those clashes would have definitely taken place over a lot of misunderstanding.
Imprisoned by the rebels of Massachusetts, who refused to recognize the authority of the Crown in the government of this Dominion of New England. I have been accused of making laws destructive of the people's liberty. This I deny. I appointed judges and established courts that would administer justice fairly, all according to the laws and customs of England, not under the Charter of Massachusetts that has been revoked. Of course, I restricted town meetings, although I did permit 1 town meeting per year, because these colonies must be made to understand that a government's authority derives not from the people, but from the king. I have been accused of imposing and collecting illegal taxes. This too I deny. I have been granted the power under the Great Seal of England to raise money needed to support the proper functioning of our government. And if men refuse to pay such
Oh
taxes,
boy, here we go. Now we're coming to the
deny.
time of William and Mary,
His Majesty's
or William of
navigation
Orange and
tax.
Mary.
I
They
have kept
disposed the Stuart
smugglers from
monarchy,
trading with our
took
French
over,
enemies,
and again a new
I have
sheriff in
increased
town.
trade revenues, adding to the prosperity of these
The new charter
provinces
was not written for a
and
godly commonwealth, but for a province in the
I've done my
king's
duty,
empire.
and I have been treated wrongfully. On
Yeah,
April 18th,
these people
1689,
really
a conspiracy
shook
of
things
persons
up.
intent on subverting the lawful government seized me and imprisoned me here at Castle William in Boston Harbor, where I have been kept for 10 months under close confinement. Twice I have attempted to escape.
Right, rounding the bend here, we're coming into another time.
Declared these American colonies independent of the Kingdom of Great Britain.
All right, James Otis, an amazing one. Percy continued to fascinate. He framed his arguments with great moral force, advocating individual rights and limits of power in government, which was a revolutionary idea. Yet he suffered a severe mental breakdown. It grew worse after a British customs officer cracked his skull. Boston Coffee House. He died in dramatic fashion after being struck by lightning. One of the saddest. Kind of reminds me of poor Light Horse Harry Lee and what happened to him in Alexandria, Virginia, after serving amazingly, having many adventures, being so much help to General Washington. He had some serious issues later after the end of the war, wound up on the streets of Alexandria. He was beat up one day in Baltimore. He was never the same after that, became crippled, and was kind of a sad, pathetic shell of what he once was. I guess if there's any mercy, you could say that at least poor James Otis didn't languish. Old Hutchie, or Thomas Hutchison, would become the last civilian governor of colonial Massachusetts. And, he's kind of a funny one. It's hard to completely hate the man. He was in a tough position, and he was just kind of a weakling in some ways, but he was doing his job. It was tough. I mean, would you want to be governor and have all these rebels around you, and there's really no good outcome for you if you're in that position? You're sent here to try to quell these rebellions, and it's just not going to happen. This Stamp-back teapot was made in Britain for the American market. Now, if that's not funny, I don't know what is. Showing some examples of things that would be taxed. Not cool. Adams, the Grand Incendiary. Yeah, I guess so. He was an awesome thorn in a lot of bad people's sides. I'll tell you that. He just wouldn't let things go in all the best ways possible. He was a relentless patriot, and he drove some people crazy. He was definitely had a target on his back, and a lot of people wanted him dead for a long time. But, John Adams' cousin, they had an interesting relationship too that was sort of on and off again, and mostly on again, but he was a real ball buster, Sam Adams. He liked to use these events for a little bit of war propaganda, and I don't say war propaganda in a bad way. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it accomplished the desired outcome, and again, here we are. But, things like the Boston Massacre, he definitely used. He made sure that those funerals were the biggest that the colonies had ever seen, and he made a point to constantly bring up and have these orations at every anniversary so that no one forgot about the oppression that the British regulars or the military was bringing down on Massachusetts. And thank God, because sometimes we need those antagonists. He definitely wanted a small government, liberties, and like I said, he actually said he wanted Massachusetts, or Boston specifically, to be a Christian Sparta. I don't think that would sit well with everybody. I personally think that he's an amazing character and really important to the entire, not just the narrative, but the story. He was more than a keyboard warrior. If he had had a keyboard, he wouldn't have just pounded on it. He certainly could have just sat around and wrote speeches or broadsides, but he didn't. He took action, held meetings, whether it was at the Old South Meeting House, out on the street, or using things to hold up propaganda like a funeral. He was out there with the everyday man. He didn't care if you were wealthy, not wealthy. Interesting fact, he his job at one point was to be a tax collector, and he sucked at it because he hated taxes. So he would basically say to people like, "Oh, Farmer John, you can't afford your tax this month? That's okay, I'll let it go." He would like turn a blind eye to taxes. Don't you wish the IRS functioned that way today? Yeah, it doesn't, but I think, bring back Sam Adams and put him in charge, because he was definitely lenient. And we've got one of my loves, John Hancock. I've said it a million times, we're all just living in John Hancock's America. We're definitely standing right now in John Hancock's Massachusetts. This man had everything to lose, and not really anything to gain by taking the stand that he did, but he did. He was incredibly wealthy, and a lot of what we have is because of him, because of his philanthropic work, because of taking a stand, organizing. Look here, this, he bought food for the poor and donated Boston's first fire engine. Ship owner, early Sons of Liberty. He became a Freemason. He was, close with Warren and Sam Adams and all those guys. A true Son of Liberty, and one that the more that I read about him, the more I adore him. These guys, by the way, also both went to Harvard. Like we've talked about before, Hancock's house was this incredible mansion, and the gardens alone just couldn't be rivaled. It was absolutely beautiful. He inherited it from his aunt and uncle after his father passed away, and his mother agreed to let them basically adopt him like a son because they had no children of their own. They gave him a wonderful Harvard education and left everything to him ultimately. And he had a beautiful home, Beacon Hill, right in the grounds of where the State House is, over by the Common. Sadly, the house is no longer, but it's always fun to think about what that must have been like. Here, moving on to some information about Paul Revere, who we talked about in our Lexington and Concord videos. And there you can see the famous painting of him that is in the Museum of Fine Art, Boston. An American icon, they say. Indeed, indeed. Remember when we went to Salem for that 250th anniversary, and we met and talked to and kind of shoot the breeze with General Thomas Gage? Well, there is his picture right there. And he had a tough job to do as well from their perspective. Things didn't last for him. Information about the Intolerable Acts and the Tea Party and whatnot. And then we enter the man of the hour, His Excellency. We had the events of Lexington and Concord we've been talking a lot about. Getting ready for Patriots Day, of course. Now, I cannot wait for the anniversary of this. This is another man that I absolutely adore and have for many years, but the more I study of him, the more I just really appreciate General Henry Knox, a man who I will get into deeper detail about very soon, but basically everything he knew was self-taught from his own determination. He was, had very little chance at life given his background, rose to the occasion, learned military maneuvering all on his own, ran a bookstore, ended up running a bookstore after just working at a bookstore. His father abandoned them. He was of Scottish descent. Let's go, Clan McFarland. Knox being a sept. He had an incredible love story with his wife, Lucy Fluker Knox, and she stayed with him all the way. But basically, the noble train of artillery was when he went all the way from Boston to Fort Ty to secure cannons and brought them by ox and cart all the way back for the siege of Boston. And it was a big success, and we couldn't have done it, probably would not be here without this incredible, very kind of nondescript, rotund man who was just a kind, brilliant sweetheart of a guy who loved his wife and wanted to free America. That is summing it up lightly. Of of course, July 4th, 1776, we would get our DEC, or Declaration of Independence, and the world would never, ever, ever be the same. I could stand here for hours and talk to you guys through great detail about every event and every founding father involved in all this, but we must move on, and I'm going to show you an incredible treasure that's just in here. This is the original copper plate used for the engraving, created by Paul Revere to depict the events of the Boston Massacre. Like, this is actually Paul Revere's creation right here in this darkened space right here, being protected in the Massachusetts State Archives. But the first time that I saw this, I actually got pretty emotional, and it is a bit of propaganda, definitely drama filled to stir the emotion and show who the good guys versus the bad guys are. But it has become synonymous with the events, and here you can see the old State House in the background. Looks much the same as it does today. Doesn't have the modern buildings around it like it does now. This is also the famous site where I lost Noah last month while trying to get the event up of Faneuil Hall, where I got splashed with the dirty, dingy Boston water. But hey guys, I survived it, so yeah. No big deal here, you know, this is just the original charter for the Massachusetts Bay Company, you know. Yeah, freaking amazing. And this was in place until 1774. Our original copies of the Declaration of Independence, they are not Dunlop broadsides like we often see, done by John Dunlop. These were actually produced by a woman in Maryland, Mary Catherine Goddard. And good on her for making these incredible copies. Look at this, you guys.
It's been in the archives since like 1820.
So these have been here for 200 years.
Yeah.
That's why it looks so good.
Yeah.
I know it's probably hard to see in here with the protective lighting, but yeah, this is really, really cool. It's almost kind of like, you know, how when you go into the National Archives in DC and you see the Charters of Freedom, they're under the glass protected. Really, really important that these are here. You see this man right here, Benjamin Lincoln. He was from just down the road here, another 45 minutes, the beautiful town of Hingham, historic Hingham. And he was quite the guy. He had some technical wins in the Rev War, some technical losses. And one of the places where a lot of that took place is where Kay and I will be headed in a couple of days for a big, ambitious mystery adventure in the southern state. But I'll talk more on Ben Lincoln, but he was beloved by his community, involved in his church. His family adored him. He was a wonderful man. Washington really respected him. Unfortunately, he just had some blunders that were mostly out of his hand come the Southern campaign, and I have not forgotten the Southern theater of the Revolutionary War. We will be touching that as time goes on, and certainly in the days ahead as we head south and us Yankees descend upon a Southern state. It's going to be epic. Some info here on Shays' Rebellion, which I've also touched on before, but is a very fascinating part of our history in the years after the Revolutionary War. So about 8 years later, Massachusetts was deeply in debt from, you know, everything that we had just had to pay for. And to satisfy its creditors, the government raised taxes, especially on farmers who were just having a really hard time recouping and found themselves facing foreclosure or even worse, debtor's prison. Many towns petitioned legislature for relief and tax reform, and it usually didn't go well, so they had to take things into their own hands, enter the armed insurrection led by Daniel Shays of Western Mass, and other counties also got involved. In the winter of 1786-87, he led an army into Springfield, which is now near the current day still, Springfield Armory. There's a plaque there depicting these events of this, but there was a battle that erupted between the men guarding the arsenal there and Shea and his men, and 3 men did die that day. These exhibits go more in depth into, what happened after the war and the building of a new nation. Main exhibit, we're going to head upstairs. There's a little bit more up here. Check it out. I heard about this. This is a drum that was actually used at Bunker Hill. Drum beaten by Thomas Scott at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Dang, that's cool. The archives themselves, this building, massive. Really important to have this, though, like I said. All right, here's some information about Bunker Hill. Bunker Hill. Bunker. Few battles in the American Revolutionary War are as ferocious or as bloody as Bunker Hill, which was actually fought because of confusion over the terrain on Breed's Hill near Charleston, July 7, 1775, and struggle to control the high ground. Nathan?
What?
The high ground again. They should have taken a page from
Obi-Wan?
Obi-Wan Kenobi. British forces succeeded in evicting Patriot militia from the Charlestown Peninsula while incinerating the town itself, but regaining roughly a square mile of rebel territory cost the Kingsmen more than 1,000 casualties, including 226 dead. American losses approached 450, including 138 dead. Next to kin who learned the worst soon submitted sad claims of restitution, like Mary Pierce of Pepperell, Mass., the widow of a private in Colonel William Prescott's regiment. Yep, same William Prescott we talked about the other day. She requested compensation of £5, 12 shillings for her husband's lost coat, trousers, stockings, shoes, buckles, silk handkerchiefs, knives, tobacco box, and of course, this is the same battle that our lovely, lovely Dr. Joseph Warren would die a horrible, sad, languishing death in, very violent manner that nobody should have to die in. And unfortunately, his body was in such bad shape, it wasn't identified till quite a ways later, and it was really only identified because Paul Revere recognized the dental work in his mouth that he himself had performed on him. So very, very real stuff here, guys, and very sad. Look, there's the lantern again. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Did you guys watch part 2 of my Lexington and Concord prepares for Patriots Day 250 years? Something like that. I think I just watched my own title video. Then you will know all about the lantern. What if by land, 2 if by sea? It was 2 if by sea, and they created a giant lantern in Concord in front of the Concord Museum, but it is moving around and will be in the parade, and we'll probably see it again. Anyways, it was very, very cool, and we happened upon the lighting ceremony and a lot of other cool stuff. So if you missed it, check that one out. It was also really good, like Lexicon 101 for you guys. If you ever wanted to visit this area and see where the first shots around the world took place, they're a good primer to get caught up on everything Lexington and Concord, April 19, 1775. And there we have my elusive Hancock once again, looking noble. Dang, he was a snappy dresser. Both fierce, manly, brave, and stylish. He was the full package, ladies. We were just on the North Bridge in Concord. Yeah, so here is Colonel John Budrick's sword. Yeah. So he gave the command to fire at the bridge, and this is his actual freaking sword. Like, oh my gosh. How cool is that? Here is resolved to pay soldiers for losses at Bunker Hill. Now, going back to Joseph Warren, kind of sad. He was a widower. He was married. His wife had passed away. He was actually engaged to a lovely young woman when Bunker Hill took place. And they were fully planning on getting married, very much in love, a really great match. But because he passed away and they were not yet married, she didn't get any say in anything or get anything of his. But she had a huge part in making sure that his memory was kept alive in the years to come, even though she was actually treated kind of like crap. Not by any of like our starring role type guys, but just by the system. And it's unfortunate. I, always wish that they had been married beforehand, because I think things would have gone differently. And I would say that she certainly deserved it, because she was almost like a wife. No, they were not living together, but they were besties and had a really loving, awesome relationship. I'm sure if they had been married, they would have had a marriage that, lasted the test of time. And just sad that the timing did not work out. Information about that noble train of artillery, which you can actually follow the map of, there's I think the National Park system has a map online where you can go to all the stops. Most of them have plaques or memorials to Henry Knox and the Noble Train, and you can kind of follow the route from Boston all the way up to Fort Ty, and I can imagine doing that in the winter with oxen and sleds. It was rough, but it was needed, and he was confident he could do it. It was a wing and a prayer, but he did it. Boy, he did it, and thank God he did. That was good, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed that. It kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, and kind of a nice little 101 on everything that we've been discussing. Back outside, and it is so nice out, albeit windy, but very mild temperatures and beautifully sunny. All right, well, like Patrick Henry, I know of no way of judging the future but by the past. The past is alive and well, certainly here in Massachusetts and at the Museum of the Commonwealth offices of the Massachusetts State Archives. And what a great little way to kind of walk through history and touch base with all the things that we've been talking about. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and it's going to be an amazing week coming up. I promise you guys will not want to miss. We are going to embark on a crazy, ambitious, maybe too ambitious, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it's going to be full of hysterics type of adventure as we head on down to the south.